So we held a meeting here for informational purposes to hear their proposal and recommendations, and they are coming to the board with a full presentation, but we wanted to just loop you in on the site selections that they were recommending. They
You may not reach the selected one.
Thank you. Next slide. So there are 4 locations that are proposed on island. Going from north to south, there would be a location. Sorry.
Can I interrupt for just a minute? Just to give a little bit of background. They had come to us years ago, before, I think they were owned by a different entity at the time. And they had told us that we were gonna have to pay for the installation, and it just didn't make any sense to us, and we kicked the can. Ben Kalos got involved in bringing them back to Roosevelt Island after Lyft became the owner of the Citibike trademark. Our capital projects department worked with both Lyft as well as DOT. Now, DOT was more involved in terms of, they maintain statistics on how you figure out how many people use the bicycles, where's the best place to put them, and our capital projects department worked with Lyft and actually went through the island from north to south, looking at more than just the locations that you're seeing now, as well as talk to DOT about their projections about the use of it on Roosevelt Island. I think we all know that we think Roosevelt Island is unique, and whatever statistics DOT may have might be helpful, but I question whether we can really rely on those statistics. But with that said, we negotiated with them. They were talking about much more than 4 locations. We saw this as a pilot because we understood that there are residents on the island that don't like this whole idea at all, and there are residents on the island that love this idea. So the idea is we're not paying for anything. The installation is such that we can get rid of half of an installation, add on to an installation, get rid of an installation. And all of that freedom on our part will be documented in the ultimate document we enter into with Lyft.
So just a couple questions for you. So the original proposal is 1 location at this point in time out of the 4?
No,
or is it
no.
4?
4 locations.
They're proposing 4 locations and a total of 72 bikes that would circulate around the island at these 4 locations. So, and they have a more extensive presentation that they will be bringing next week, along with representatives from Lyft and City DOT to sort of walk through all of their criteria and explain all of what Susan did in greater detail. But for the purposes of this meeting, we wanted to go over a little bit about the locations that they were suggesting. So, starting from south to north, the next slide you'll see proposing South Point Park as one of the locations, because they feel the statistics and analysis show that a lot of visitorship wants to go to Four Freedoms and visit South Point Park. So there would be a station, and the blue box indicates their suggested location. And again, as Susan mentioned, these can be moved and split up in other ways.
Are all the modules the same size?
They're all the same size, currently forecast at 36 stations for each location.
Right. Okay.
So the second,
But only half of the modules would be filled.
correct. Yeah, they have a two stations per 1 bike ratio, and if that tends to be more than is needed, then they can adjust accordingly. But that's
And
how they plan.
they adjust, they reposition bikes as needed?
Yes.
Okay.
So the second place where they were suggesting, next slide, is close in between the tram, the ferry, and not so close to the subway station, but really the transportation hub. It would be on the north side of the street, adjacent to Firefighters Field. The third location.
It's gotta be right abutting the new comfort station.
Yeah, it'll be close to the new comfort station, but it will be able to capture those people coming off the tram, coming off the ferry, and with a little walk, you would be able to go from the subway, come up to that location. The next location would be at Motorgate, underneath the garage structure. We felt that we wanted to move it away from the main line of pedestrian flow along the sidewalks. And then the final location would be along the western promenade, just north of Octagon Field, and shy of the sanctuary facility. And we're hoping that we would capture the residents from Octagon and take advantage of the fact that this is in fact on the promenade, which is now used for bicyclists. We looked at other locations closer to the front door by that triangle, but really when we looked on at the eastern part of Octagon, we just felt it wasn't appropriate and that it would be easier to have it located here. And so, as I mentioned, these were we wanted to bring you up to speed about where we were in this phase. They're going to do the full-blown presentation. They've submitted a draft agreement, which our attorneys are reviewing. We've reached out, the Public Relations Department has reached out to Terrence and the Public Information Officer, so they're looking for the board, when they make the presentation, to give approval of this pilot. And then the work could be, the materials would be ordered, the press announcement would be decided upon at a later date, and the installation can happen later this spring.
How long, if they decide that they're not making any money on the deal or being underutilized, do they have the right to pull out?
I haven't seen the draft agreement, but they didn't indicate that they would pull out. Because
I don't
Councilmember
really remember.
Kalos was
I'd have
here,
to
I
get
don't
back.
remember, we'd have to get back to you, but.
I know we can.
We can.
But I don't know if they can.
But they didn't state that at the meeting, but we can go back and look.
But how long is the proposed term for the lease of the locations, for the signing of the locations?
I think at this point it's 5 years. I have to double check. I don't remember the terms of the agreement, but we do have an option to terminate early, and as do they.
But is it is it for convenience and not for cause, or is it for
For convenience.
for convenience? And is there any type of termination fee of any sort or any type of penalty for you to do so?
No. Look, I think the truth is, Jeff, we have no idea
Yeah.
how this is going to work and whether we're gonna like it, love it, hate it. And so we're calling it a pilot, and if we don't like it, they know that we're not gonna want it.
So, but going to the 4 locations, I'm sorry, I'll back off in a second. But when Citibike first rolled out the initial program, I mean, they went into heavy foray to Community Board 8 and to front of the community for the community to individually cite and say preference locations. And I guess I'm interested in finding out, given the number of sites that they've said they want to have out of 27, however many they wanted. Statistically speaking, even at that point in time, was there a heavy desire by the community, by those who participated in the program, to have both Citibike program on the island, number one, and number two, the locations? Because during that point in time when they were in the community and they were citing the different sites of where those Citibike locations are now, it was because they had opened up to the community, and all the participants were stakeholders and community members themselves were allowed to go in and put pins, for lack of a better word, of where they thought a bike location should be, if they wanted it or not. I'd be very curious to see how responsive though there was to having locations here on the island themselves.
There were additional locations that they desired, but given they wanted to put something along Main Street, they wanted to put something on the sides of the different residential complexes, we felt that the pilot should really be focused and the location should be focused on where we have people coming on.
Well, absolutely, but I think that the counter side of that is that, notwithstanding, and I think the corporation and the board itself is doing a good job of saying if the locations would be here, it should be ones that make sense. I think the question is if the community had expressed the concern or what desire to end the locations of those.
We can pose that question and make sure they're prepared to answer it when they present the full proposal on next Thursday.
I have a question about this particular location. It's not a destination, that spot, so it really, for anybody to use it, it would compel them to walk from the Octagon or the ball field. I don't understand that location.
I think it was viewed as perhaps Octagon residents would take it to go to the subway.
Why would they, it's a couple of hundred yards from the entrance to the Octagon.
Well, it's right on the bike path. And I think that was the rationale. Somebody picking up a bike at the tram may just drive up, leave it there, go on to Lighthouse Park. It could have been closer to Lighthouse Park, but there's an actual area, it's gravel now, it's ugly and it's gravel,
Yeah.
that is just sitting there.
But
And
it
it
still
just
leaves,
seemed-
you know, if the idea is to have a convenience for the residents, for example, like the people that live in the Octagon, that's not convenient.
Okay.
From my standpoint, it should be, you know, right at the Octagon, like the rental cars or.
But then it's viewed as something just for the Octagon residents.
No, not at all,
Okay.
but, you know, you might as well put it where it's gonna get the most use.
I mean, it's right near a transit center. I mean, if the whole
Right.
point is to provide this as alternative means of transportation,
Mm-hmm.
then the location should make sense to all points of transportation.
Okay.
That is a
Can you tell-
transportation, that is a transportation center
Yeah.
in front of your building.
Yeah, the
Right.
red bus.
Right, exactly. This is,
Absolutely.
right. This is what David is saying, is that, for
And
example,
also, the city bus goes on the street right there also.
Yeah, and you've got the color hospital, those people might use it, you never
Yeah.
know. But there, it's buried there.
but it also induces, I think, at the end of the day, for use, if we're using it for transportation purposes, to use it properly and not be meandering the sidewalks or the streets or the, you know, the promenade, and it discourages to a certain extent, because I think that's the bigger concern, you know, amongst communities, how is the influx of the number of bikes going to affect the promenade and, you know, those who use it, because there's use of it with bicycle, but it's a very limited use presently in comparison to walkers and to pedestrian use.
Well, let's look at the other locations on the north side of the island that were suggested.
Okay. Thank you. John, can you switch it to?
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Howard, wait, Howard do that.
Howard, can I ask a question?
No, Rick?
So just in regard to Jeff's question about whether or not residents want this, there, Citibike has said, and Kalos has said too, that Roosevelt Island was had the most requests for Citibike service of any other neighborhood in the city.
Wow.
So whether or not that's true, I don't know, but that's what,
Well, and it's great that they can
What's
also
that-
present the locations that were cited.
That's
because,
what-
you know, at the end of the day, people didn't just say, oh, I want on Roosevelt Island. They wouldn't put a pin in Roosevelt Island, the location that they were
right.
And that should be the locations that we are basing this on, not just on what makes sense for Lyft to generate money as to locations. And
Right.
it's-
So why was the subway not considered for the station instead of the tram? At the tram, you're gonna get mostly tourists. If it's at the subway, you'd get mostly residents using it. So was there any infrastructure reason why it wasn't at the subway?
I don't know the answer.
I believe some of the upcoming work planned for the subway platform itself, and that there are projects on the books right now for improvements to the subway station that MTA is going to be doing. There's projects on the book right now for the generator, which is across the street from the subway. And it's very tight down there right now without the addition of having the bike station.
Well,
there.
there's
So-
currently that bike rack, which is
Right.
there also.
Yes, but
So-
those areas, we have received requests for future work, for staging areas for a permit for those two zones on the north and south ends of the subway itself. So that plaza is gonna be under construction, and the proximity to the train station was considered, but given that we have upcoming work that's proposed by other agencies, we felt that it would be better to have a pilot with the stations closer to the tram and ferry.
And they can always be moved.
And they could be moved.
Right, well,
And
I would
There's
just,
two-way streets down by the fire blues field too. If you're at a subway, you only have one direction. You can't go straight down to the park. Of course, they do that all the
At
time.
the moment we're painting the shed, can we move forward and agree we're gonna bring this forward at the next board meeting?
Yes.
And that we have there may or may not be a consensus for it. But
Right, so,
Right, they-
so
they're gonna
so
make
you-
a full presentation
Right,
to
so
the
you
board.
know that people are looking at alternatives for the, location, that they're wondering why something was not sited in closer proximity to the subway. There's a bike storage structure under the helix now, under the platform. Why was this not in greater proximity to that perhaps?
Okay.
So, any other questions regarding this?
Just one comment, because we have been sort of the planning committee, which Rick and I are on. Most of the people who have been most positive than the ones in Octagon, actually. Because most of the other people are not gonna use it for commuting.
Okay, thank you. So for the tape, it's been observed that the Octagon residents would most likely be using this for commuting before other residents because of distances involved to transportation hubs. And so citing convenience to the Octagon may have greater priority.
But also the Southtown residents could be using it in the reverse direction to go to the supermarket back and forth if the bikes were placed closer to the Southtown buildings instead of the tram. That's just something,
So that's observed.
So we will make sure that the presenters talk to how they made this selection.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and frankly, they wanted many more.
They did.
than
no, I think you did a
four.
great job. I mean,
So,
yeah,
so it's
Right.
really a question of, let's see how it goes and we'll add.
yeah.
I mean, I think that was the attitude.
Yeah, Main Street.
As long as you guys wanna extend the conversation, how many people, who are the people that don't want bikes? I heard,
I can comment on
There are
that.
people generally that
Mostly-
think there are too many
mostly
bikes on the
people with
island right
children
now.
Who are concerned about the safety issues on the promenades. That's because some of the people operating the bicycles may not be experienced bicyclists. They come as visitors or tourists. And so that was the main issues I heard that they made.
I think the people we don't want using bikes on the island are the delivery people. And then we'll never stop them. They're the reckless drivers, the delivery people. I mean, I've never.
that's not an issue.
Right,
Yeah,
that's not-
not our not our neighbors.
So, let's move the agenda forward.